Chery has had explosive growth in Australia off the back of its range of popular and affordable SUVs. And now it's even coming for Toyota's crown with a range of hybrids. You've probably seen hundreds of these on the road already. This one's the Tiggo Ford, Chery's small SUV offering, and this new plugless hybrid version should tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. But to find out why I'm disappointed by this one, you're going to have to keep watching.
First up, let's talk about which Tiggo 4 we've been driving. See the drive-away price tag on your screen now. For the small SUV category where there is intense competition, this is hardly the bargain basement price Chery usually seems to aim for, but then this one is the top spec ultimate. Its primary hybrid rivals include the popular Toyota Yaris Cross, which you might be able to get in GX form for similar money once you include on-roads, the MG ZS, which is still more affordable in its base spec but more expensive in its top spec, although the Tiggo 4 still looks like a relative bargain compared to the significantly more expensive Honda HR-V or Subaru Crosstrek. You'll spend a bit more to get into the also currently very popular base Hyundai Kona, although the Kona is slightly larger, while the also slightly bigger Haval Jolion is priced uncomfortably close to this Chery hybrid. So it's not quite the standout bargain which the larger Tiggo 7 or Tiggo 8 represent, but its standard equipment is still pretty impressive for a small car like this. The ultimate grade nets you 17-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, dual 10.25-inch screens for the multimedia screen and digital dash, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, synthetic leather seats with power adjust for the driver, dual zone climate, a non-panoramic sunroof, ambient interior lighting, a wireless phone charger and a 6-speaker sound system. At this price, that's not too shabby at all.
The Tiggo 4 really is generically inoffensive, and I think it shares its kind of box on wheels vibe with other popular small SUVs like the Hyundai Venue and outgoing Mitsubishi ASX. I do think there are a couple little details on it which are quite nice, and it does line up really nicely thematically with the rest of the Tiggo range.
Highlights include the big grille and LED light strip across the rear. On the inside, things look pretty swish for this small SUV category with the big, lavish synthetic leather seats, the tidy steering wheel from elsewhere in the Tiggo range, and again the generic, if tastefully done, dash.
Up close though, things are slightly less good. The software on these screens, for example, has a selection of quite clumsy looking themes. While I appreciate that this home screen on the multimedia suite has a kind of smartphone layout, which makes it quite easy to navigate, once you get a menu or two deep, it starts to get a bit inconsistently labeled and a bit confusing to use. For example, there's 2 settings menus and a whole bunch of other features that you probably won't use, which is weird. However, wireless Apple CarPlay has worked pretty well in my time with the car, and it's nice that it's got it. Other practicality highlights include this area down here. It's got a completely separate screen just for the climate controls. There's a slew of touch-based shortcuts, which is nice, and there's actual physical controls for fan speed and temperature as well, which is nice to see, because not every car these days has actual physical controls for those things, so nice to have. This center console is also entirely gloss finish, which is a bit upsetting because it's just going to scratch up and get covered in fingerprints really easily, especially that climate section there. And then there's a selection of slightly odd storage areas. So you've got a large bottle holder in the door. There's 2 more in this center console, but they're quite tight. They don't quite fit this bottle in them. And then there's this slot here, which might be good for phones or keys, but I'm not really sure what else. It has kind of rubberized edges. There's also a weird little cutout behind the shifter here. It's also gloss finish, so it's going to get scratched up if you actually use it as a storage area, but it does fit the keys quite nicely, so there's that too. One of the highlights does seem to be these seats. They're quite plush. They're clad in like a synthetic leather, which seems pretty hard wearing. They seem quite nice, especially for a car in this category, but I will say that you sit really high off the ground. Like, this is set to the lowest possible position it can sit in, and I'm 182 centimeters tall. My head is already almost touching the roof. Like, I tried to take a drink out of a water bottle the other day and I couldn't tilt the bottle back far enough because it hit the roof. So there's not an awful lot of headroom in this car, and it does feel almost like you're sitting on the car rather than in it, and that's a common feature of other Cherys too. And one other benefit that this car does get is a massive pass-through under this bridge-style console here, and there's a wireless charger down there too, which is rubberized, and so it holds your phone in place quite nicely, so I like that. Let's go have a look at the back seat. Okay, the back seat of the Tiggo 4 is actually quite a highlight. That's behind my own driving position, and for such a small car, you can see I've actually got a not bad amount of knee room here and not a bad amount of headroom either, despite the fact that it's got a sunroof in the front. There's quite a nice sort of cutout here so that it feels quite spacious. Plenty of room for your legs as well, and there's no big raised center piece here that's usually required for all-wheel drive because this car doesn't have all-wheel drive, so it's actually enough room for an adult to put their feet down in that center position, which is quite rare for this category as well. The seat trim also continues. It's quite nice back here. And yeah, I think on the whole, it's not a bad little space. Amenity-wise, you've got a few interesting things. So there's driver exit warning in the door here. So that's if there's a car or a cycle coming and you go to open your door, it'll actually warn you there, which I haven't seen in too many cars before, so that's quite neat. In the center here, you've got a kind of Cyclops air vent. It's just the one air vent, so I hope you've only got one rear passenger or the kids are gonna fight over that. There's also a USB port, just a single one in the back of the console here, and a weird little storage tray. Let's see if it fits my phone. There you go, it does. So you could, I don't know, cable your phone up there. That's kind of handy. In the doors, there is a small pocket and it only just fits our bottle. I really had to squeeze it to get it in there. And there's a further two more in this drop-down armrest, although they're quite shallow, so you might get a bit of tilting action there. There's also soft pockets on the backs of each seat, and on the whole, I actually think this rear seat is not bad for the category.
The boot measures in at 470 litres, which I initially thought couldn't be true because of how small it looks. I was surprised to find it did somehow fit our full Cars Guide luggage set. There's a slightly strange rise in the boot floor to accommodate the 12-volt battery, which is a bit odd, but there is a spare wheel under the floor instead of just a repair kit like a lot of its rivals get.
The Tiggo 4 Hybrid has a 1.5 litre non-turbo 4-cylinder engine paired to a big electric motor in a kind of hybrid transaxle setup that helps blend those two power sources quite nicely. Now, interestingly, the brand doesn't state combined power figures like a lot of its rivals will. Instead, each of these power sources has its own power figures. See them on your screen now. The interesting thing about that, you might have noticed, is the electric motor is a lot more powerful than the engine, which we'll get into when we drive it.
Now, according to official numbers, this version of the Tiggo 4 will consume 5.4 litres to 100 Ks, which doesn't actually sound that impressive compared to some of its rivals. But I was impressed to find our car consumed much less, at 4.5 litres to 100 Ks during my testing, although we did primarily drive it around town with some freeway stints sprinkled in between. Boosting this car's credentials for your running costs, it can accept base 91 unleaded petrol.
Even the most recent crop of Chery models like the Tiggo 7 and Tiggo 8 are hardly notable for their driving dynamics. But even then, this Tiggo 4 feels like it falls short of the standard that they set. Common themes are present. The pedals don't have an awful lot of feel to them, especially when you're braking. That sort of regen is blended in a little bit strangely, making the pedals feel a bit wooden. And also the steering is pretty lifeless and overly electrically assisted, making it hard to tell a lot of what's going on at those front wheels. There's a few other little things too, like there's a creak in this center console, there's a rattle occasionally in this B pillar, and there's another rattle in the back somewhere which I'm yet to identify. On top of that, the ride quality is also pretty ordinary. Now, other Chery models also have this problem, but at least they're somewhat consistent. They tend to be a little doughy and remove you from the road, especially in the corners. Now, I took this Tiggo 4 on a nice curvy road the other day, and the ride was all over the place. It sort of bounces you around. There's a bit of head toss in the corners. There's some uncouth, kind of bouncy and inconsistent moments. It feels a little hard over the rear and occasionally a little soft over the front. And I just found the whole experience just a little disappointing and not up to the standard which a lot of other small SUVs, even in this category, are now up to. And look, I know that not everybody cares maybe that much about how their car drives, but it's all these little elements that add up to make this car feel particularly underwhelming compared to its rivals. Now, all of that having been said, one of the highlights of this car is its hybrid system. It feels just like a Toyota hybrid drive system. It's nice and quiet, it's smooth to take off. It has a solid proportion of that electric driving in there, and I'd say that's largely thanks to its more powerful electric motor. But unlike the MG3, for example, which also has a more powerful electric component compared to its combustion drivetrain, this car manages to maintain its battery life at a much more reasonable point. And this is good because it means it doesn't have any moment where there's not enough juice left in that battery to power the electric motor. And that actually makes this car quite rapid, particularly at commuter speeds. The way this transmission's geared, it's actually got quite a lot of get up and go, and it's nice and smooth and well executed as well. When it does need that combustion engine, there is a little bit of an unpleasant tone, but that's not unusual for these plugless hybrid systems. And if you've driven a Toyota before, which has needed a little bit of combustion support to help that battery stay at that charge level, you'll be familiar with the sort of shrill engine tone which can enter the cabin at that point. One of the other frustrations about this car is the stock tires aren't very good. I do find that powerful burst of torque from the electric motor when you really step on the accelerator will easily overwhelm these Salem tires that come on this car. And it does make me wonder how much better it might be if you were to equip it with some better tires from a more mainstream brand. So all in all, this car has been a little bit disappointing on the driving front. The ride is a little bit all over the shop. The tires are a little bit disappointing, and the driver inputs aren't really where they should be. And really, all of this stuff could be fixed, but not with a software update. And that's what makes this car behind the competition. Now, of course, when it comes to active safety equipment, the Tiggo 4 is relatively well equipped for a car in this category. I'm not going to rattle through all the stuff now. Make sure to check out our full review over at carsguide.com.au for the full list. But I bet what you want to know is whether those systems are well calibrated, because there are plenty of options on the market right now that are full of active safety equipment that is kind of annoying to use. Now, the Tiggo 4 does have quite a few annoying and invasive systems, but you can turn a lot of them off and they actually stay off next time you start the car. One of those is the lane centering assist. You can switch that off and it stays off and it doesn't annoy you anymore. But one system that has been consistently frustrating in the whole time I've been driving this car has been the driver attention alert. It seems to be on every time I start the car, and it chastises me for even looking down at the digital dash sometimes to find out how fast I'm going, or to switch between the menus on it to see how much fuel I'm consuming, for example. So that's been a particular frustration. Still, this isn't one of the most annoying safety systems on the market. It just does sometimes have weird, inconsistent moments where it'll bing and bong on you for seemingly no reason, and that driver attention alert seems to be constantly at you. Funnily enough, it's letting me talk to you in the camera now, which should give you an idea of how inconsistent it is.
7 years and unlimited kilometres is Chery's standard warranty, and it's paired with a matching 7 years of roadside assist and cap price servicing. That service pricing is $299 for the first 5 years, with a notable jump to over $700 at the 6-year mark, dragging that average up. See the average yearly cost for the warranty period on your screen now.
If you are just looking for an affordable car that will save you fuel, the Tiggo 4 will do the trick. But there are just so many little things that it could do better that it really does make it evident that you are getting what you're paying for. And to me, that makes this car a little bit disappointing, because the other recent Cherys that I've driven have been so pleasantly surprising given their price point. What do you think? Would you pick the Tiggo 4 over something like a MG ZS or a Haval Jolion, or something more mainstream like a Toyota Yaris Cross? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and as always, make sure to check out our full written review over at carsguide.com.au.